All right, Stace, you want to kick this thing off?
This one, the chords are going to be like bump, bump, bump. I just want to point that out because I might go a little off key. So, this is the Showrunner Show, and we'll tell you the things that we know about running a television show. Oh, the O didn't work out. The O was supposed to be like a surprise, like, oh, I hit the rhyme the wrong way. Oh, damn it.
It was great.
It was excellent.
Thanks.
I was surprised.
Running a television. See, it was supposed to be,
Welcome, everyone, to the Showrunner Show, where every week we demystify some aspect of the job of showrunning for anyone who works in TV, who wants to work in TV, or just wants to know how it's all made. I'm Drew Dowdle.
I'm John Eric Dowdle.
And I'm Stacy Shabosky. Greetings. Welcome.
Welcome.
We're glad you're here.
This week and next week, we kind of wanted to talk about the cost of a career in writing. And I remember in film school, I had a series of writing professors who like to say, like, if you can do anything else besides writing, do it, because this career path is so difficult. And I remember they would say that as a kind of a platitude, and, it didn't deter anyone. But nobody ever said, like, this is what life being a writer will be like. And this is, the difficulties you will face. And these are the things that are awesome about it. And I feel like when choosing a career path so often, or a career change so often, like, it's so rare that you actually get a look into what that entails. Like, what are the plus, what's in the plus column, what's in the minus column. So this week we wanted to talk about what are the costs of this job? Like, what does this job cost you as a lifestyle?
Yeah, I love this topic. I think this is a really good one to talk about, because I think people think you either a life in writing or, anything in the arts, but writing in particular, because that's what we're talking about. But it's either, struggle, and then you make it and it's all easy and great, and I think that's, not quite accurate. And I think, and we certainly don't want to deter people from this career, because, next week we're going to talk about the benefits of a career in writing and all the great things too. So keep that in mind as you listen to this episode, that this will be more of the cost side of the equation.
We're doing pros and cons, and these
pros
are the
and cons. We're starting with the cons, and but I think it's true for most, people you would look at and say, wow, they're successful, that they still struggle, and it's still, not like a regular job in the rest of the world where you make a paycheck every single week and you get paid 12 months a year. The kind of one of the major downsides is it's kind of, you get paid, in chunks when you're working, you get paid well when you're working, but you're always having to get a new job, as soon as, we just had one television show end, and it's like, we're now, immediately, we're always looking for a job, even when we're working on something, but you kind of never are able to get out of that headspace of being in that hustle and trying to scrounge up another job. And I think that's, part of the fun of it, honestly, is it keeps, a lot of variety in your life and keeps things interesting and ever changing. So you're never kind of in that same routine day after day after day. That's, a really nice thing, but it's also a cost of this, I think, for me, is that kind of low level insecurity that kind of hangs over your life all the time.
Yeah. It makes it hard to make sound life decisions, especially about finances when you're on a show, you're making the kind of money that you could think about buying a house, but then when's the show going to go away, and
will there be another show?
Will there be another show? I've heard from so many people that being on the second show, getting the second job is harder than getting on the first job.
That's interesting. I believe it too.
We should talk about that. I know we have a whole list here of cons, but one of them should be just breaking in. It's a really, obviously once you're in, it's still difficult and challenging and has some downsides, but the breaking in of it can take years and years.
Oh, it took Drew and I like 12 years of trying everything we could think of to start actually getting paid. And that, collectively, like it took us, I guess once Drew was full time, things really ramped up because Drew is a badass, and
Not really. We just
and I was like, he's gonna go away if this doesn't work. So it put a lot of fuel on the fire for both of us, because we knew we couldn't sustain it unless it actually started to pay us anything. And but it was like, I'll say, for myself, like my 20s hurt real bad. It was very, like broke all the time. And I would like do odd jobs and like go PA for a couple of weeks, and then I'd have enough money for a couple months. And I lived like super frugally. It was a real Spartan life, and, no vacations, using as little gas as possible. You know what I mean? It was like all the like spending nothing on anything ever.
And working on stuff that's maybe not very meaningful. I think part of the reason people go into writing is to, create meaningful stuff. But then when you have to have day jobs, sometimes some of them are meaningful. I've done some babysitting where I still love those, the kids I used to babysit for. But then, I did a lot. I was the world's worst personal trainer for a while.
I forgot about that.
That was not, all I did was injure older people's shoulders. Sorry, I tried my best. But I guess my best wasn't good enough. So that can be difficult too when you're like in your 20s and you're searching and you want meaning and you want to like do something important and you've got the energy to do it. And you're just not doing anything very important or meaningful. That can make you feel empty.
Yeah, I'll put on the cost list too. Like all the like extended family. Like, are you still out in Hollywood trying to be a director? Like, oh, you're still doing that? You're 30, and all your friends like have families and houses, and it's like, oh, are you still out there doing that? Oh my
God, I hate the word aspiring so much. So I hear you're an aspiring actor. Like, oh, it just kill me, And then you got to hold up your one credit to be like, no, I said one line in something 7 years ago. I made it.
That's maybe the thing you just have to be willing to stomach if you're going to pursue any career in Hollywood is those conversations with your family from, wherever else in America for at least a decade of that, like, skeptical questions you get at Thanksgiving. And that is just, there's no way around that. You have to be okay with that.
Yeah. Drew and I remember we used to always say like, got to keep your eyes on the horizon, because if you're looking at the waves, you're going to get seasick from like, oh, nothing's working. But if you keep your eyes on the horizon, you stay mindful of like where you're going. Yeah. Like, okay, everyone thinks we're being crazy by doing this. Like everyone thinks this is a really, like I remember when Drew moved to Hollywood, like I finally, after like picking at him for years, finally like pulled him in. And our parents called me and like, what are you doing, dude? You ruined your life. Don't ruin his. He's doing great. Like, why are you pulling him down with you?
Drew is the only person I knew with a 401k other than like my parents' generation. And you just devoured that 401k like a goblin, slowly.
I did. I can't help it. Like, looking back on life saying, what if instead of just spending that 401k, I traded it for like a house in LA in 2004, oh my God.
Oh,
like,
sure.
Yeah.
That would have changed the math of my life pretty significantly. But
could have had a craftsman.
Anyway, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah, totally.
I think, the other problem with the family conversations is like when I did, before, as John's mentioning before, I fully committed to moving out to LA. I was working in finance in New York, and like, what's great about a job like that is when you talk to your family and they say, how's work going? And you say, good. And that is literally the end of the conversation. Like they don't need to know anything more. You're making money. You're doing good. Whereas when you're doing anything in, film and TV and it's like, oh yeah, I'm working on this thing. Oh, tell me all about it. Like sometimes when you kind of don't want to talk about it all that much because you are insecure about it, they still want to know every detail. And the conversation goes on and on and on. So it's like a double whammy. Yeah. Like you can be kind of like hiding from that reality, but they also want to know all about it. And that's challenging.
Yeah. Well, and there's often that thing, like when, we had the movie Poughkeepsie Tapes, we made it, it was about to go out to theaters and then they shelved it at the last minute. It was like this devastating thing. And that was, and shelved it for like almost a decade. And so for the next decade, it was like, when is the Poughkeepsie tapes going to come out? Like everyone we talked to for 10 years was like, when is it going to come out? Why did they shelve it? And it was like this like kind of traumatic, like painful thing for us. Just like that you just have to go over and over with every single person in your life. And
after like 10 years of that, I think we got kind of snippy. Just like, look, we will tell you, if it's coming out. Don't ever ask about it again.
Yeah.
Please.
Well, I knew Drew got snippy about it, so I could just sit back and let Drew like snap, bite people's heads off. Like, enough, stop it.
But I want to go back to like what you were saying, John, too, as far as that struggle in, all through your 20s. And it was, a long struggle for us. It is a different world now. I mean, back what we were trying to do, the TV writing industry just was different back then. And you were either kind of a film person or a TV person. And there wasn't such a blend of the two worlds as there is now. And like, that didn't feel like an option back then to us to like, just pick up some TV work, like it was, we were going for like the moonshot, indie film, sell it at a festival and, and make a career that way. And that's, a great way to go, but it's also, the odds aren't great either, but it was kind of an all or nothing path where I think, a lot of talented writers that are, let's say moving to LA or moving into the industry, even if you don't move to LA, I think it's less important, less critical now to do that. But, if you're 22 and wanting to start a career in writing and moving to LA, TV is going to be probably what the jobs you're going to be looking for right out of the gate. And not saying you'll get a job right out of the gate, but to get that writer's assistant job and then to move into staff writer, like those things can happen a lot faster than a decade of struggle, and I think there is just so much more content being made in TV now than there was 10 years ago. And that, contracting a little bit now post-strike, but it was still, the volume is so much higher than it ever was before. And it's a little less all or nothing mentality and a little bit more like, okay, I can get a day job and it may only last for 20 weeks, but that's 20 weeks and I can start working on the next 20 weeks, at some point during the first 20 weeks. And I think it's a little bit more stable.
But I'd say part of that struggle of, through our 20s and stuff was necessary for the building of craft. You know what I mean? In that time, we were writing and we were making movies and we were putting them out there and learning, and frankly, learning to deal with rejection and things failing, things not going like, oh, this didn't work. What can we try? For example, we had one movie, we submitted it to all the film festivals, got into nothing. And we retitled it, recut it, sent it out the next year, and it got into a bunch of film festivals. And that was a lesson, my first movie that I did without Drew, I submitted to 2 festivals. It got denied to both, and I was like, oh, I suck. And I just, sort of curled up and, didn't know what else to do. And so that was a lesson, just learning to take that rejection and come back at it. And I'll say, one of the costs too, like Drew and I realized pretty early on, like the feeling of making it, or getting a career in this is, we kept saying like, oh, the feeling of success is a million little failures. Like, for example, like we'd have like a small indie movie, we'd submit it to 20 film festivals and get into one.
Yeah. And
to the outside world, it's like, oh, look, they got into a film festival. But to us, it's like, yeah, we got denied at 19 film festivals. And, that's the feeling for us was like failing 19 times.
Yeah.
Whereas to the outside world, it just looked like a win. And I think that sort of over and over, it's like you get notes, you get partners who don't treat you very respectfully at times, or people talking down to you, or, actors who kind of beat you up here and there. Like, there's just all these things that are hard, and just building that resilience, I think is really, really important. And it's part of it. It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. Like, that's just, that's just a part of what this game is.
Yeah.
Building resilience and building craft, because that is one of the really nice things. I'm not supposed to talk about the good stuff right now, but one of the good things is with writing, all you need is like a computer. You can do it. You don't have to get together, a whole film crew to write a script. You can just do it. And I do think that young writers looking to break in should be writing lots and lots of specs, and probably with each one they're getting a little better. Now maybe it's not a straight path. It's not like each script becomes the better script. You might discover that some of your good ones were early on or things like that, but your craft is improving.
Yeah.
And then you have your little arsenal of things that, hey, if you hear they're looking for a writer's assistant on a medical show, maybe you have your medical one, or you have your comedy, or you have you're building up your toolkit, building your craft. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you don't like doing that, if you're like, ugh, do I have to? Then maybe you don't like writing that much. And maybe that's a good thing to know. And you can go, be a therapist or go to law school or do one of the other, cool things.
Yeah. And I mean, going back to what you're saying, John, too, is the million little failures. I think every project we've ever had has, I'll use Waco as an example. Waco season 1, like that was one we felt like really good about this, project, about the story, about the writing. We had Michael Shannon and Taylor Kitsch. We felt really good about the package when we were going out to sell it. And we only got one buyer. We thought, this will be, at HBO, or it'll be, something really fancy. And, we're finally going to get that like HBO or, Netflix show at the time was like the place to be. And we got rejected from all of them. And we got the one buyer in Paramount. And, at the end of the day, I think the show would be considered a success in every measure. And, got 3 Emmy nominations, like everything about it would be considered a success, but only if you were us and knew that like, we got no's from almost everybody except one. Yeah. And
I think how many pitches did we have?
I think we had like 12 or 13 pitches, and that means we had 12 no's, and that's, you think of that as that's a lot of rejection, but we've made a whole career on saying, all you need is one. And with Poughkeepsie tapes, when we sold it, we had one buyer essentially. We had, MGM bought it, but that was like 2 weeks after Tribeca when we'd almost, given up. We had one other offer that was like for a fraction of what we made the movie for and was going to be a loss, but we really essentially had only one buyer there. We essentially had one buyer for Joe Pickett. It's like, one is all you need.
Our previous movie, we premiered at Slam Dance. Didn't get an agent out of it, didn't get a buyer. Like, we're like, well, we're going to get an agent. We're going to sell this. And nothing, just crickets. No one even wanted a meeting. Like nobody even called to say like, hey, interesting work. What else do you have? Like nothing,
We saw you won a jury award at Slam Dance. Like, no, 0. None of that.
None of that.
None of those calls came in. Yeah.
Remember how we used to do that Tony Robbins thing? We had done one of those Tony Robbins like seminars or tapes or something. And he has a thing where you're supposed to like, when something good happens, like you've been rejected 19 times, but then you got a yes, you got an offer, you got the good thing happened, to take a moment and to physically pat yourself on the back and to physically give yourself little awards hands. Yay! That little thing where you shake your fist over your shoulders. Remember we used to do that all the time? You're supposed to jump up and high five yourself. I still kind of do it. Sometimes I'll just be like, good job, and I'll hug myself,
Oh, I do this. I do like these hands. I go, F yeah, what I mean? And I give myself little F yes throughout the day.
Oh wait, I gotta go get the F yeah.
The smallest things, like it might be, I took out the dishes, I'm like F yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's like, oh yeah, I have one of those. I got a brass F yeah to sit on my shelf to be like F yeah, Nobody's gonna clap for you if you don't clap for yourself. You know what I mean?
No one's ever going to say take a bow. In writing, there's no take a bow moment. You're not on stage. Yep. You're not a guitar player. Like you don't take a bow. It's just, even if you're walking the red carpet for a premiere, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like shoving on Spanx and like getting your hair done. It feels lumpy and gross and like, oh God, I got to make small talk, but I'm nervous. I feel gassy. So you have to create your own.
I got to give a speech.
Got to give a speech. Oh yeah. That's a big cost.
I just like,
Oh yeah. You'll get so nervous about that. And so yeah, you have to manufacture your own, like, wait a minute, this calls for celebration. Even if the celebration is just literally going boop, boop, boop.
And I think to celebrate the shots, not celebrate the results necessarily, if that makes sense. Like, I think it's important to celebrate, like, I sent this script out, I delivered this, F yeah. Like, as opposed to like, great, they bought it, or I brought this pitch out. I did a bang up pitch today.
So the bravery or the effort is what you're celebrating more than the success.
More than the success.
Or the bravery is the success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think celebrating any even minor success is really important because I think it's, you look at it from the outside and you're like, oh my God, this, director went to Sundance first movie and now they're doing, the next Marvel movie. And like, that's what making it looks like. And, and I think that's true for so few people out there. And it's really amazing when it does happen. But, that is just, most working people in the industry, like us, have a ton of failures and just, you almost just get that one success when you really, really need it most. And then, and that'll keep you going. And, just enough to cobble together a life and a career, is a success in this industry and is worth it. I think we'll talk more next week about why this is all worth it, but it is so, I believe, I feel like in my life, it's been so worth it. And,
me too.
But it doesn't often look like that. You make one thing and then everyone, throws you up on their, douses you in a cooler Gatorade and then throws you on their shoulders.
You're financially set. You remember the sweetest thing that, I don't know whether it's Nancy Pimentel or Nancy Pimental. I don't know how to pronounce it. I remember reading years ago, she famously sold a spec script for $1 million. And I remember being like, $1 million? She literally never has to work again. I remember thinking that. But it's not true. $1 million buys you jack shit in LA.
And they're not telling you the terms of that. Like, it's $100,000 up front and then $900,000 once it makes $10 million at the box office.
Yeah,
that's
it.
Yeah. May never come to pass.
That's it.
So many of those deals that you read about, you're like, holy crap, that person really made it. But making it like, as you make it, it increases the pressure in a lot of ways. And that's something I hadn't fully clocked, that as it goes, there's more responsibility, there's more pressure. Like, in fact, recently I had the pleasure to hear Tim Grover speak, and he was like Michael Jordan's mindset coach and Kobe Bryant's mindset coach. And one of his big things is pressure is a privilege. Like, people doing nothing have no pressure. But like, if you're feeling pressure, that is a privilege, and honor that. And I thought that was a really interesting way of looking at pressure, because there's a lot of pressure in the show running sphere. Like, once you're at that level, there's a lot of things that are going wrong 100% of the time. You know what I mean? There's always 5 houses on fire that you have to figure out how to put out in what order. And some of that is like, it's so important to build that craft and be able to find that calm place in yourself that doesn't attach too strongly to each one of those, problems, otherwise it'd just make you crazy. So I think, the rejection and failure and stuff, builds a strength and internal fortitude that is necessary for this job. And that's both good and bad. It, kind of forces you into kind of a stoic or Buddhist mindset of learning not to attach too strongly to things exactly as they are, but like being open to change and to become more flexible with reality and the world around you.
That's really important. It really is. The mindset of being able to trust in the universe and trust in the process and trust that things will work out. I mean, that was, I feel like I've had to exercise that muscle so extensively and throughout to this day, I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but it will work out. And that kind of faith you have to have in yourself and just in the industry and the universe at large. You think, it really is, compared to if you were to be a lawyer or a banker or something like that, where it's just like, okay, if I lose my job at this firm, I'll find another one. I'll have a regular thing, until I retire. And that's, one path, and it's certainly a lot more secure path. But I think there's downsides there too.
Yeah. I read something years ago that I liked so much that I wrote it down on a little scrap of paper, and it was wrapped. I can't remember who came up with it, but it was saying that if you want to succeed, you have to deal with a lot of crap. And it was an acronym for criticism, rejection, assholes, and pressure. And I literally have trotted those out. And at different stages of my career, Like there have been stages of my career where there's very little pressure, but oh, so much rejection. And then things go a little better. And now there's not that much pressure, but there's a lot of criticism. Like when you do finally have something out, when you do finally write something that gets made and people can see it, then that means tons of people will immediately write cruel things about it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Cruel reviews, mean message boards. Anytime I only do it occasionally, but I'll occasionally peek at like a message board or something, and it's all about how stupid I am.
I know.
But then you're
It's
like, wow, 10 years ago, I wasn't even successful enough for people to criticize me.
Yeah, that's it. That's totally it, isn't it? Like, be careful what you wish for. You finally get something out, and then legions of people online telling you how much you suck.
Finding you on Facebook, being like, "I hate you." Like you're like, "Why? You don't? What is that?"
What did I do?
Yeah.
Oh, I go so crazy whenever friends of mine who aren't in the business, will get very like critical of things. Will be like, "Oh, I just saw this show. I watched all the episodes. It was garbage. Let me tell you how it's garbage." And I'm always like, I've gotten very vocal about like, settle down. People worked really, really hard on that. Everything that gets made is a miracle. Nobody phones in anything unless they're a total jerk. Like everyone is trying their best and cares so much. So if you don't like it, I totally get it. But let's not kick the creators nuts just for fun.
And if you hated it so much, why'd you watch all the episodes?
Totally.
Why'd you just turn it off after one? Oh my God.
Like, you really got to find a better use of your time.
I know. Let's talk about your time management. What's going on in your life?
I'll put this in the plus and minus column at the same time. It's hard. It
is hard.
Writing is hard. Rethinking a script and finding new ways to do a character or new storylines that, just pushing it through, pitching, just all the stuff. Like it's hard. It's a really hard job. And I'll put that in both sides because I find in some ways trying to do really hard things is easier than trying to do really easy things. Because doing really easy things, I get bored, you know what I mean? Like, right now, I was having a hard time like working out every day. So now I'm doing the 75 hard thing. It's like 2 workouts every day, 45 minutes. Like it's like way over the top, but you know what? I can do it because it's hard. And it gets me into that mindset of like, okay, I'm ready to do a hard thing. And I feel like, one of the nice things about writing and kind of one of the difficult things about writing is it's hard. It's hard every day. And you show up and you have to really think about it and you have to really work through things and you have to, work through emotional, because you care so much, but then you have to set your emotions aside and look at it like, like a surgeon, just, with a cold calculation and then go back to the emotional place like that. That is hard. And, just it's a very hard job, but why do easy things? Like that's just boring.
Sometimes it would be peaceful, though. I definitely have a lingering fantasy about apologies to any postal carriers out there who are like, it is not easy. But I think about like, oh man, maybe I could just deliver mail. I could walk around and daydream all day. That has been a decades-long fantasy of mine.
Yeah.
But I'm not a mail carrier, so I guess I, opted for the writer's life.
I think being a mail carrier in Los Angeles might be slightly better than being a mail carrier in Minnesota or somewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
We're tromping through the snow. Yeah.
But it's the thing about it being hard is like, what if this time, like I just got a whole bunch of notes yesterday, right? And I'm sick with worry about it because what if this time my talent dries up? What if this time I try my very best and it stinks? What if like I write something and it's okay because I'm a pretty good writer, but what if it's boring? Like what if, and you see that with people's careers, we've all seen people we really admire who have a string of hits that are so wonderful. And then 20 years later, they're doing something and you're like, oh dear. I mean, I don't want to name names, but where you're like, oh my God, you're the person that made that classic movie. And now it's as if you've never written a thing, like talent does sometimes dry up. And what if it's this time, and you have to face so much self-doubt and so much self-judgment. And that takes a lot of bravery for me.
I'll say in my the people I've seen have like kind of talent dry up problems up close. has seemed to me to be the result of them not listening to the people around them. You know, like they get to this they rise up and like get more and more successful, and then they're like, I'm brilliant. I don't need to listen to anyone. It's perfect as is. Whatever, my first draft is perfection. And I think that's, honestly, like we all have blind spots. We all need, as much as like getting notes and stuff is hard. I think it's necessary for everybody. Like, especially the people that, the highest tier of people, like they need more people in their ear pushing them, and,
I wrote a novel because, I wrote a novel just because I like reading, and I thought, wow, this will be fun. And it was fun. It was really, really fun to write it. And it was so great because other than a few notes from my agents, I had no notes. It was just me. And nobody's even going to act it or do anything. Like the thing is the thing. That is the final form, is the written word. And then no one published it. And so there's that too of like, oh, sometimes working all by yourself, like, sometimes it leads to nothing too, whereas when you're collaborating with other people, like it means it's happening. It's actually happening.
And there's, connection and relationships that come out of that, which is really fun too.
Yeah. That is true.
Let's say one last thing, living in LA. Ooh. Like when I got out of film school, the only place to have a career was in LA. A lot of the writers' rooms are in Los Angeles. All the productions used to be in Los Angeles. Now they're all over the place. But if you want a career in writing, it's less absolute that you have to live in LA, but it definitely would help, to do that for a time. And that can be very disruptive as a cost. Like, I grew to really love it here, but that it was felt foreign to me for a good number of years when I first moved here.
And it's expensive. It's not expensive compared to like a New York City or a San Francisco, but if you're coming from,
anywhere else, yeah.
Yeah, it could be
else.
A little sticker shock.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. LA is so awesome.
LA is awesome. And it's, I don't think it's critical as it used to be, but it's still very helpful, I think, especially in those first few years. If you're staffed on a show and you're going right into a second show, I think, you can probably skin out of LA, and most of these, most all writers' rooms are on Zoom now, and
but a lot of them have come back to live.
Some of them have come back. You're right. You're right. So it certainly doesn't hurt to be in LA, and if you get the job in an in-person room, you're not renting an Airbnb for 6 months or something. It does still help. But
we've liked doing Zoom writers' rooms because it really opens up a lot of people from a lot of locales. We've had people in our writers' rooms, in Arizona, in West Virginia, in Canada, like, all in the writers' room at the same time. And that it's really opened up the kinds of voices we can get on our shows. And that I found that's been really helpful, but that's not how everything goes. And there'd have to be, if you got staffed on a big show and it's a great show and you really want to do it, you'd be able to afford a place in LA, a place to rent or something like that. And it would be worth doing that, for the 20 weeks of the writer's room but that is a cost. That is a cost. And,
especially if you've got family and they're coming with you. If you're free and easy, single, that's one thing. But
yeah. And some writers' rooms, like, the culture of some writers' rooms can be toxic, can be kind of awful. And I would just recommend, like, when getting into this industry, to see if you can find out the kind of reputation the showrunners have. Like, do they work people 14-hour days because they're going through a divorce and they are afraid to be home alone? Or are they people who have a life outside of it and have families and stuff, and so only work 6-hour day? You know what I mean? Like, every writer's room has its own culture. And so that's worth noting too. It's not just one thing. So just in summary, some of the costs of having a career in writing are pressure, rejection and failure, the uncertainty. It's really hard. You may have to live in LA for a time. There's a lot of financial ups and downs. There's stress. Those are a lot of the costs of it.
What's our actionable tip of the week, would you say?
I don't know that we have one this week.
I feel like there was a lot about resilience and grit.
Just keep writing. Hey, I'll give an actionable tip of the week. When Drew and I were coming up, every script that got rejected, we'd write 2 new ones. And we're like, we literally can't be beat. If for every script that gets denied, we write two fresh scripts. Like, it's like a hydra. It's just going to eventually, the sheer weight of our craft will overwhelm the industry. So the hydra approach, you know?
Sheer weight of our craft. I love that. That's awesome. Yeah, the hydra approach. That's great.
Real.
All right. So if you like our show, please consider taking a minute to subscribe and to rate us wherever you get your podcasts. And it'd be awesome if you told a friend. We have some metrics. We've been seeing like, oh, more people are watching it. Oh, that's so delightful.
It is
and
so
they come from
delightful.
all sorts of different countries. It's really fun. Anyway, do all that stuff. That helps us a lot. And we super appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.